far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees.
Good day, everyone. I'm Donna Jones Simmons, co-author, co-founder, and architect of the 100 ABC Women Project. Today's conversation is about futuristic topic, harmonious leadership, with Dame Dr. Janae Azontras, who is quite an outstanding speaker and authority on the topic of leadership. Today's inspirational conversation is between two powerful women. So let me introduce you to the next accomplished Black Canadian woman. Her name is Jacqueline Dixon. Jacqueline is a sales and marketing expert, trainer, speaker, business entrepreneur. Over to you, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much, Donna, and it is an absolute pleasure and honor to be here today and to be the moderator for such a powerful topic of conversation. Harmonious Leadership. My guest today has an absolutely outstanding bio. Please give me the opportunity to just give you some quick insight into her background. Dr. Janae is the founder and CEO of Ahava Digital Group, ADG, a woman-led digital consultancy working with Fortune companies to help them connect with women consumers using data and technology. She is an award-winning Canadian businesswoman that is the recipient of the prestigious 2021 RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Excellence Award, one of the 2022 EY Entrepreneur of the Year for Ontario finalists, and a recipient of the 2020 WXN Canada's Most Powerful Women Entrepreneur Award, Top 100 2019 Honorary Presidential Service Medallion by the U.S. Presidential Service Center, and Employer of the Year by Canadian Business. Though Dr. Janae's adept leadership, Ahava Group's consultancy has swiftly become a unicorn organization that Canadian Business ranked 12th in their 2020 growth list, making her the first Black woman in Canadian history to achieve this feat. This accomplishment was achieved by developing a proprietary technology known as the Data Concierge, a cloud-based management software that contains the only ethically sourced verified data file on American consumers. In 2021, the International Trade Council in Washington, D.C. awarded Ahava Digital a top placer in the Go Global Awards for utilizing the technology for the economic advancement of underdeveloped countries. In 2022, the Ahava Digital Group was awarded as one of the America's fastest growing companies by the Financial Times and Statista. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. I just want to welcome my guest today, Dr. Janae. Good afternoon, Dr. Janae. It's a pleasure to have you with me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Jacqueline. And thank you, Donna, for before. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Dr. Janae, I am a student of leadership. I pride myself on being an example to other females on how to be the most effective leader that we can be, bringing out the best and greatest possible you. And looking into your background and understanding how many things that you've been able to accomplish under this umbrella of leadership has made this interview for me today even more special. This topic, as Donna introduced, she mentioned the word futuristic topic. So I really want to dig deeper into that word futuristic, because when I think about the topic of harmonious leadership, I think to myself, old guard versus new guard. And maybe we can just start by clearing that airway and give us, please, the definition of what is harmonious leadership.
Absolutely, Jacqueline. It's interesting because as you were sharing about the old guard, new guard, harmonious leadership is actually the sustainable leadership of the future. I think that what people didn't realize in the old guard was a more traditional form of leadership, which is more power paradigm. And then there was also different types of leadership, transformative, we've heard, as well as servant leadership, which is foundational. And some people kind of cringe when they think about servant leadership because it's not really something that fits well with our current, the current economic structure of how we have business set up, right? So servant leadership is that you lead from the place of servitude and how can you help your staff instead of it being about title. So the one part about harmonious leadership that And why this came to pass was it actually, the concept of a harmonious leader came from two places. An unfortunate catalyst that impacted me personally and professionally. There was a person in my circle, unfortunately, who attempted to breach my family's privacy and security. And really what they wanted was aspects to my life, which I had made private intentionally. And after this unfortunate situation, it left me questioning, why was this person this adamant about prying into my life? And what I realized is that this person was looking to find the secret sauce of what made me me. And so about 3 weeks later in 2018, I read this article by Jeff Bezos, where he said that he preferred the term harmony or the word harmony to the word balance because balance implied the strict trade-off. And so as I began thinking about that concept of balance over harmony, I began thinking about how women throughout history have been striving to reclaim power over their lives and careers, and began thinking back to when I started to have a digital group, all the obstacles that I went through leaving my corporate career to being a stay-at-home mom, trying to balance all of those responsibilities while starting a company, which was now Have a Digital. And what I discovered during that time is that women have to face greater challenges trying to maintain their life responsibilities while managing a business. So when we look at men, most men have women who are upholding the parts of their social life and personal lives that allows them to go out into the world and solely focus on being leaders in their fields, as we've seen depicted in media. So in 2019, that's when I started formalizing a lot of my family's legacy here in Canada. And one of my advisors said to me, what actually drives you? What makes you passionate? What do you want the next level of impact to be? And I told her that the next level of impact that I want to focus on is this. I want to launch a legacy initiative called Holy Living Research Institute, where we strive to discover and unpack some of these contributing factors of what it doesn't mean to have a harmonious lifestyle and how that in fact goes on to impacting a leader. And so we investigated a spectrum of women leaders from different sectors. And what we discovered was that the impact of a harmonious leader is actually one of the vital and contributing factors to women becoming empowered in positions of leadership. And the way that we actually roll that out is we focus on what I call the 7 pillars of harmonious living, which is the concept of God, spirituality, health and wellness, relationships, business, which include career, legacy, and wealth, intellectualism, and then creativity and play, which equates passion and purpose. What drives us? What actually fuels us? How are we filling these wells? And so what we discovered is that once women actually are consistent in developing habits to fill these wells, they actually show up more empowered in their roles, they have higher performance, they're overall happier, and then guess what they do? They empower other women to be the best women that they can possibly be in their lives as well as in their organizations.
That is absolutely fantastic and empowering just listening to you explain it. When I read up about today's topic, there are a few words that kept jumping off the page, and maybe you can elaborate on these words or explain to us how they connect. When I read about it, I'm seeing the word empathy. I'm seeing the word mindfulness. I'm seeing the word environmental. I'm seeing listening to other people's voices. So can you explain to us how these particular subject matters fit into the harmonious leadership role?
Sure. Well, my background, my PhD is actually in metaphysical sciences. And so metaphysical sciences looks at things holistically, but it looks at the root of things holistically, right? So when we look at a person, we're looking at them spirit, mind, and emotion, right? That's actually what makes up a person's psychological disposition and how they calculate decisions, how they what lays a foundation for the decisions that they make, and then how emotionally aware or intelligent they are and how they behave in their day-to-day living. So a big part of what I do is that it's how I built my organization. So I specialize in, a part of my PhD was specializing in concepts around conscious leadership. or conscious business ethics, as well as conscious centered living. Now, what many people may not know about me is that this journey didn't necessarily start with a Have a Digital. A lot of people know me now because of a Have a Digital, but initially when I did start the company, I was podcasting. And so I built a substantial body of work on emotional intelligence, talking to some of the world-renowned thought leaders and healers and feelers in this field. Worked very closely along Hay House at that time. And I will tell you, one of the things that I've discovered that has become very important, and it's actually upcoming in a talk that I'm going to talk about, is leaders, unfortunately, for the most part, live in this place of overwhelm. The reason why that person in my circle was prying into my life, because they were trying to figure out, how come you have all of these things going on and you're able to navigate with ease and breeze, and I can't even navigate through my life. And so one of the things that helped me establish as well, when we started recalibrating on how we were going to talk about this in the private sector and the public sector, it was looking at a framework. And so a part of what Harmonious Leadership did for our team is we actually started implementing this as a company structure through our HR, that we actually support our staff and do quarterly check-ins. And then as they grow out in this process, we do biannually check-ins to see where they are on their wheel of harmony, right? That wheel of harmony represents these 7 pillars of harmonious living, which are wells of capacity that need to be filled and also help people organize their lives. The other part is that, meanwhile, that focus, harmonious leadership focus on the individual. The one part that was super, super cool is that we started looking back throughout the company's history and even our personal growth. That's what the leadership team did. And we started looking at our own personal growth. Now that we've become established and we've implemented the practices of harmonious leadership, how can we now take this out into the world? And so we developed something that we have actually been packaging for organizations or larger size organizations, but it can be implemented from the ground floor. And it's called the Have a Digital method. And it teaches what I call the G's and the 4 P's, which is God, purpose, people, planet, and profits. And people always say, well, profits is at the bottom. How does a company run? Or how does a company grow to your size if profits is the last thing? Profits is an important component, and no different when we look at the harmonious wheel of leadership. Money is an important component, but it is not the only component to living harmonious, right? And the same thing for an organization. It's not the only component to making a company run effectively. And so,
Doctor, I just have to interject here, okay? Because you've got me here, and there's so much to unpack. There's just so much to unpack with what you're saying, but let's rewind to those 4 pillars again, because I love it. Can you just repeat what those 4 pillars are?
So there are 5 pillars. So it's G and 4 P's, and G represents God. P represents purpose. Planet, people is the third one. Planet, and profits.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And continue, pick up where you left off. So we were talking about the fact that all of these are components of the bigger plan. And maybe you just continue to elaborate on that, and where you were talking about profits and exactly where that fits in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that I share with people are always like, well, if profits are at the bottom, how does an organization run? And especially an organization of your size. We're a unicorn. And for those that don't know what a unicorn is, we've in fact crossed the $1 billion threshold in terms of revenue. And so people are like, well, how does a company of that size operate off of God? Well, the one thing is this: we focus on the leadership. And so what many people do not realize is that a lot of times when people walk into organizations that feel disorganized and there's a lack of effective communication, it very much starts with the leadership, and the tools that they have put in place creates a ripple effect all the way down to the front line. So one of the things that is very difficult for many executive leaders to hear is if there isn't a chink in the armor, it starts with what's happening at the C-suite level, right? So you can only lead people when you are in fact in a place of order. And that means you have to have an anchor. One of the things that I've discovered in my journey, being a young Black woman who has gone through all different tiers of socioeconomics, is most wealthy people have a belief in God. So there's this illusion that has been created via media that this is most people don't, or they're doing something else, or no, most people have a belief in God or source, if that's what some people want to call it. And so for me, that became the head. The other part is that when we talk about money, money cannot be your driving factor, because you will not be able to sustain it. Because you've heard the saying, more money, more problems. Well, more money, more problems, because money, as quickly as it comes in, is as quickly as it goes out. And so it can't be the driving motivator, because you will be on an emotional fluctuation. So you actually need an anchor in this. One of the things when people ask about, well, what if I don't believe in God? Right? What if I do not believe in God? How does this framework, how can this framework be utilized? And I said, this can be utilized from the atheist to the human secularists to even people that are of every major world religion. Okay, because a part of what we've done at Avahava Digital, and we're probably revolutionary, a lot of the concepts that you are talking about that you're hearing right now in mainstream media, we started this back in 2011. It was a wellness organization. It was women who were stay at home, who were joining to kind of take a vision and bring it forth, right? So we had to have meetings where dogs and kids and people crying and breastfeeding and pumping and all of these things were taking place, which would be, gauche in the workplace. But it was a very real reality, because women had to navigate around what were the true realities of their day-to-day lifestyle. So when we look at that framework, it in fact operates off of this pillar of integrity and discipline, accountability and boundaries. So therefore, regardless of whether or not somebody has a belief in God or not, they can still implement this. The other part is that when we talk about purpose, right? Purpose being the second pillar of this Ahava Digital method. Purpose becomes your driving factor. Once you have your mind right, then you have clarity of purpose, right? So you have your mind right, you have clarity of purpose, which then allows you to attract and find the right types of people to bring that vision to fruition. People are in fact the organization. And I think a lot of times people are severely undervalued in the amount of human performance and output that human beings give to an organization. They should be well taken care of from all tiers of leadership. There are leaders from the front line and all the way up. And the way that we teach in our company is under the premise of Robin Sharma, that a leader with no title. Right? Everybody is in fact a leader. Everybody is in fact a part of this collective that is aiding and supporting, bringing a vision to fruition. And then when everybody is in one accord, what we can in fact do is go out and create community and global impact, right? So this is where the part around the planet takes place. So I think when people are asking about how do we actually utilize this method, this type of method can be utilized for any organization, and it fulfills all the components of sustainability from an SDG as well as an ESG as well.
Thank you so much for that, Doctor. And I want to stay on that topic of everybody can be a leader. Mm-hmm. When you mentioned that, that really resonated with me, being a student of women in leadership myself. Many women feel for some reason that leaders are actually born and that they're not a leader. They could never be a leader. They were under the impression that leaders they were ordained to be a leader. Well, and maybe some of that is true, but is it possible that leaders can be molded? Can we develop leaders? Is there a method? Is there a blueprint that maybe Ahava has that can be rolled out to the bigger world and to teach us how to develop more female leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the one thing that we should talk about leadership, this concept of you can only be born a leader. There are people that, in fact, are born just like myself that have unique gifts and skills. And I think too often how that is shaped in media is that if you can't be a Janae Eisenstrass or an Oprah Winfrey or a Robert Smith or somebody that's like that, then therefore there's no point in trying. But leadership actually starts at every tier, as I shared. And so I know women who are amazing and spectacular leaders over their household. My mother-in-law recently just passed, and she devoted her life to service, being a corporate wife, devoted her life to service, and um, and ran her household as if it was in fact an organization. And I think that, and unfortunately, is where many people, like, and when we look at mainstream media, that part gets diminished, right? Because there has to be an agenda pushing of how do we fuel inclusive capitalism. So anything that doesn't fuel the bottom line, then therefore gets diminished or overlooked. When we think about women staying at home and raising their children, right? You know, I was really honored and privileged that while I was building my company, that I was always there for my children. I had the ability to be there. I based everything around the structure for them. And it's interesting, we just had a conversation recently with my children, maybe sometime this year. And I said to them, what was it like for them having me be at home? Like, they don't know any different. They didn't know any different for me not being available or accessible, right? And a lot of women are forced and put in positions to choose. So I think the one part that we need to look at is how do we develop leaders at each level and empowering people in bringing forth their brilliance and at the place that they are. Success is self-defining based upon where you are, not based upon where you think you want to be. And I think that has been the unfortunate message, where it's left many people entering into the realm of entrepreneurship who may not necessarily have the skill sets to be the builder of an organization, but can be definitely a sustainer within that organization to bring forth the brilliance of that organization. And too many people, we need to sometimes know our lane and our place, right? I think that's one of the things when I usually do talks, a lot of young people ask about, well, how did you stay focused? Because I knew what my lane was. You can't drive a car looking in through someone else's windshield. You'll crash your car. And so we have to become focused on our lanes and not comparing and trying to tune out the noise of what's happening in our day-to-day realities.
Thank you so much. And again, let's push deeper or dig deeper into that, some of the statements that you just recently made. I want to talk about the qualities, or in other words, the characteristics of an effective leader, or of a harmonious, sustainable leader. Because as you just clearly explained, leadership skills can be learned. These are some people definitely have the qualities, as you say, the unique qualities that they were born with, but in many cases they can simply be learned, and they can be learned from all different tiers. So let's talk about some of those qualities, because in doing my research on this topic, again, some words, some very, very powerful words kept jumping off the page, and one of them was honesty, integrity, confidence, and again, empathy comes back. They're saying that these are the most valued qualities or characteristics of a harmonious leader. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, actually, I'll take it a step further. You know, a lot of people talk about honesty, and honesty, depending on what tier of leadership you're in, you have to understand most leaders are making decisions based upon worst case scenario and horrible case scenario. And so a lot of times, and we've seen this in, especially socially in the political realm, many leaders are put in situations where they have to be withholding, which is in fact a form of dishonesty and fairness. So I don't really like the term honesty. What I would prefer people say is integrity. Integrity is doing the right thing under difficult circumstances. And so when you do the right thing under difficult circumstances, keep this in mind. You're not going to be able to please all people, but you can assure that you will have a clear conscience if you are doing the right thing under difficult circumstances. The other part is discipline. Okay, so you can't have great integrity if you don't have good discipline, and you can't have good discipline if you don't have good integrity. These two actually go hand in hand. And so why people say, well, how is that possible? Because discipline is doing whatever it takes regardless of the circumstance. Right. So a lot of times when you look at people and why there's people at different capacities and different levels of growth, it is one based upon capacity and how much you can take on based upon what is your personal history and your current circumstances. But a big part of that also is, God, bring it back. I just had the train of thought, bring it back. A part of that is your personal circumstances and how receptive you are, in fact, in being consistent. Consistency and discipline and practice are all similar, two sides of different, they're similar coins, but they wear different ways. Consistency is doing something with repetition over and over. Practice is developing the discipline to do something over and over, and being disciplined is doing it regardless of whether you feel like it or not. And one of the things that's very difficult is when you look at some people, and this is what I was going to share, it just came back to me. When you look at why some people are a part of the 1% and why some people never step into their purpose, is because it really comes down to those two places: integrity and discipline, being able to do whatever it takes, and then also doing the right thing under difficult circumstances. The other component would be vulnerability. That's the other reason why I don't like the conversation on honesty. Vulnerability is not just so you want people that tell the truth, of course. And so I see some of the comments coming through. I don't want people to think that I don't want people to be honest. Absolutely. But what I will share is that honesty can sometimes become muddled based upon the options that you're presented with to make a decision on. So I don't want to, because a lot of people will end up with moral injury if they do not realize and become emotionally attached from that. So you have to align with integrity. When we look at another part is vulnerability. And so vulnerability isn't just about telling truth. It is about walking people through your truth, regardless of what that truth looks like, right? So with vulnerability, it usually can put you in compromised circumstances, because people can in fact use your vulnerability as a weapon against you. And so it's how do we share vulnerability in a place of leadership that still keeps healthy boundaries, holds our team accountable, but also allows us to connect with our team. The other part is people that are able to delegate. The best leaders understand the power of delegation. They're somewhere between middle management and getting into an upper management or director role, where a lot of times people feel like, well, how come I'm not moving up the ladder? Because a lot of times you want to move to upper management, but you're still behaving as if you're in middle management. And middle management, as well as frontline, are in worker bee mode, which are great. But if you want to now start proving that you have leadership skills to actually climb the ladder, that means that you have to develop the skill set of delegating, which means I'm empowering somebody else, I'm trusting someone else, I'm delegating to somebody else. So therefore you gain trust from the person that you're overseeing, as well as the respect that is deserving, because they feel empowered, they can trust you now. And you're also not micromanaging. That's the other place that I want to say. So those are really important components. In leadership too, it's also being able to pivot effectively, which means that you have to establish new boundaries and repurpose those boundaries given on particular circumstances, as well as building in advisors that hold you accountable, because no one is an island and can walk through this journey alone.
Thank you so much. And as you're talking, Doctor, you see me nodding like this, and I'm going to tell you why. Because my mental checklist is going off as you speak, as you talk about each one of these skill sets, and I'm check marking. Oh, yeah, I fit that one. Yeah, oh, I need to work on that one. Oh, so this is a wonderful, wonderful information sharing session that you are providing to us today, because it allows us to do that self-assessment, which every so often we all need to do if we really want to grow into the best version of ourselves. And I'm a big believer for constantly working on Jacqueline. I'm constantly working on Jacqueline because I really want to see that best version of myself develop. You spoke about vulnerability. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I agree with everything, to be honest, but vulnerability jumped out at me as well. And you spoke about the fact that you know, people can use your vulnerability as a weapon against you. Well, doctor, if I can just say that I do believe that that is absolutely true, but I also believe that you can disarm your critics.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
With and owning your vulnerability.
Absolutely.
If you own it, you've disarmed them. So what weapon is it now that they have? What do you feel about that?
I think it's twofold, and I absolutely agree with you, because that's the other side of the coin, right? So I always tell people, I think a lot of times when people start talking about empathy and wanting to show up as a vibrant and brilliant leader, they get into this place of angst, especially when we start talking about vulnerability, because vulnerability means that you have to walk people through your truth. And you're right, you can absolutely disarm people, but it's a little bit different. What I share in some circumstances, when you get to a certain tier and a certain place in your leadership, it becomes easier to share the story because you're on the other side of the journey. A lot of times it can be difficult as you're navigating through that journey. And when you are coming up against obstacles in your own personal life, and then other people are taking or trying to rewrite your story or creating noise or whatever, it can become in fact difficult. So one of the things that I share with people is something that God had revealed to me in this journey around how to disarm this. A lot of times we focus on the one person who doesn't like us when there are thousands and millions of people who want to, in fact, love and embrace us. And I think that's the one real unfortunate advantage that the adversary presents, is that he gets you to focus on this very insular perspective when there's a ton of other people. So that's one, I'm giving you guys some practical application points and how you can shift your mindset away from that. Focus on the abundance of people, not the scarcity of people, right? Which is in fact the difficulty, I think, sometimes, especially when people are going through adverse circumstances. And that's even true for leadership, because one of the things that I've been talking about for the last few years has been this vulnerable place in leadership. We've seen a rising of entrepreneurs who have mental health issues and suicidal issues because of the simple fact that no one gives them the space to be themselves. And they dehumanize them by pedestaling them in this belief that, well, if you're successful, you're perfect. You're in fact perfect. That is not true and far from truth. Most leaders are in fact overwhelmed, and what they call role burnout is what psychologists call it. They're burnt out. And so one of the other second components as to why I developed Harmonious Leadership, or this framework, was so that way people could actually look at an organized system and follow step by step through something that they could say, okay, you know, I've accomplished this, so great, next. I've accomplished this, so this is great. So how do I fill in the gaps of my life, or can be utilized for vision boarding? I've also done this. I teach leadership groups across a mega organization in the United States weekly, where I've actually empowered women around wellness, leadership, and mindset to help them get clarity through the power of something as simple as vision boarding. So this is taking vision boarding 2.0. When you have the framework of the areas of your life, because a lot of people, it's not because they don't want to do better, they just don't know where to start to do better, right? And so how do we actually extend that olive branch to kind of draw them in and say, you know what, I'm going to come alongside you, sister. I'm going to come alongside you, Jacqueline and Donna, and let me show you how you can live a harmonious life without, and like the other woman who was trying to pry into my life and not understanding she was egregiously overstepping boundaries. I think too often, because of social media, and I will humbly confess, you know, I've been very active in some of this process around social media. So I believe that it's a great tool, but it also has deficiencies as well. And one of the deficiencies is getting people in this place of comparison. You know what, I always tell people from a spiritual standpoint, stop comparing, because you don't know how insulting that is to your creator, that you would ever denounce the beautiful and unique gifts that he has given to you, and that you could actually bring forth to the world to, in fact, support, inspire, and empower other groups of people. So stop comparing yourself to other people. You have to stop that. Also for your own mental well-being as well. It's not fair because none of us start at the same starting line. We all start at different places. And even when I share my own story, Jacqueline, I tell many Black women, who say, Janae, I want to grow up and be just like you. No, you don't. You do, but no, you don't. I want you to be inspired by me, but you cannot be me. I want to know about Jacqueline's story. I want to be inspired by Jacqueline's story because here is what people don't see. They don't understand the level of pain, adversity, and overcoming that had to become me, right? And so we have to be mindful when we speak certain things into existence that we're mindful that it aligns with what our purpose is here on earth to do.
I'm speechless. I can't afford to be speechless because there's too many women that are listening to this conversation that are depending on the information that we're sharing today. So there's a question that came in the chat. So we're just going to kind of revisit this quickly because there's so many other questions that are lined up here before we wrap up today. So the question came in the chat and it's basically asking you, Dr. Janae, how do we share our vulnerability as a leader if we're concerned about the fact that others might use it against us? And that's a bit of an oxymoron, I think, in there, right? So, but I'm going to let you, the professional, take charge of that question. Please go ahead.
So I being a woman of color, and especially where I grew up, so I'll share a little bit about me. And ladies, I don't know how much time this video is going to be, but I have time today, thank God. So I'm going to share a little bit about this. I'm a Black woman who grew up, I'm first generation Canadian. I grew up in a place called Guelph, Ontario. It is a predominantly Caucasian space, okay? And especially when I was growing up. So I grew up in a place where I didn't see people that looked like me. And the people that I eventually did see that looked like me didn't come until I was almost a teenager in my life. And so one of the things is that in my home, my parents never spoke about race. The white people that I grew up around never made me feel awkward. They never told me I was too pretty to be a Black girl. They never said any of that stuff. So when you grow up in a reality where no one actually tries to make you feel inadequate, you have the freedom to be you. And I think this is a part of one, if I was to share one of the underlying motivations as to why that catalyst or that unfortunate catalyst impacted me is that Black woman who I in fact loved. It was in fact a Black woman. She could not see her own beauty. She could not see her own brilliance because she was constantly trying to look into my life to find some type of reality for herself. And you can't look at my life. You can only look at your life, right? And what people see when they see me, they see the success, but they don't know how God had to put the pieces back in my life. Because there was a time prior to Harmonious Living where I was building a company and I had resources, but I had no peace. So it didn't matter about money. And that's what I want to share in our community. So I'm thinking that money is going to be a solution to something. It is in fact not. It is one component to that. You have to have a healthy spirit. You have to have a healthy mind, which leads to healthy emotions. And that will impact all of your physical, financial, and all the other parts of your life's output. So that's one of the key parts. The other part is, how do you share that vulnerability? Why I share the story around how I grew up is because I was free to be myself. So when I walk into spaces, I'm just showing up as me. I don't care who is in the room. I don't care if they like me or don't like me. And I think the one part that I want to empower our women, Black women, is you're a queen. You are beautiful. And some of you need to know that you are in fact beautiful, and to walk in with poise and grace and share your story with truth and honesty, and not be concerned about who is in fact going to judge you. Because a lot of times when you think somebody is going to judge you, there's always going to be a person in that room that needs that very seed that you are about to share planted in their heart. And so and that is actually one of the things that I will share with you. It's a lie from the adversary. Do not believe the lie that you do not get to show up as your most brilliant self because there are barriers. I'm a dark-skinned Black woman who built a billion-dollar company, and I started my company on a $20 Squarespace website. I had primarily white men and women who helped me gain that. So you know what? There's always going to be bigots. There's always going to be racists. There's always going to be these people out there. And I'm not sharing, I want us to keep moving forward the conversation and the needle around diversity, but I don't want us to become blindsided by when one-off exception circumstances pop up that we lose sight of who we are as a people. You do not oppress what is not great. And if we are going to become the light into the world that we know that we are and truly flourish, we need to know our Black women are going to be at the helm of driving that forward. And you are in fact beautiful, and you deserve to stand in your greatness, regardless of who is on the other side of that door and who is standing in the room beside you.
Again, wonderful. Thank you. So, Dr. Janae, let me jump to the next question here. And again, it's all feeding off of what you're speaking to right now. Now, I want to talk about the fact that you mentioned something which is extremely powerful. And again, I can't agree with you more. Wanting to, looking at an individual and admiring where they are today should kind of sort of be left right there. You know, use that to inspire you, but don't necessarily, aspire to be them, because to be them means that you would have had to walk their walk, and that's not always a pretty feat. I share that all the time as well. But how do we also share our successes with our fellow sisters and brothers out there without appearing to be intimidating? Because this can also drive people away. I am not intimidated by you. I'm empowered by you. But in many spaces, an individual might look at you and feel intimidated. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, I actually have a great story with this. So in my first marriage, I actually moved into the Thornhill community, and I was totally removed from Black, I will share honestly, Black people for about 10 years. And once I integrated back in amongst Black people, so around just before I started my company, around 20, I'll say 10, 11, it was, I remember going to this networking event with a bunch of Black women in Toronto, and they were gorgeous. And I was like, yes, they're beautiful like me, they're smart like me. And then I tapped into the energy and I was like, hold on, hold on. What's going on here? Why is it so aggressive? Not understanding, because I had been so removed from my own community for such a period of time, I did not even understand some of the social dynamics that had shifted in that 10 years as to why Black women were having to walk around with armor. Now, a big part of that is the dynamics with our men, right? And how they have to navigate the world. And so Black women also, in order to navigate with our men and the world, they have to walk with armor. But that wasn't, that I could understand. The part that really profound to me, there was this beautiful, gorgeous, like Beyonce-like looking Black woman standing in the corner of the room. And she couldn't, and as she saw, we connected eyes, she couldn't lift her eyes. And I went over and I held her face in my hands. I said, sweetheart, why are you bowing your head? Why are you crying? Because I don't think that I'm beautiful or worthy enough to be amongst you. And this is when we talk about acts of displaying vulnerability. The way that you as a leader can really truly connect with people is that you first have to stoop in order to conquer. And my mother used to say that to me all the time as a child. My mom always had like these great Caribbean references, the stoop to conquer, a still tongue keeps a wise head. We know all of these things. You make children, but you don't make their minds. All of these things for those of us that come from Caribbean culture, no. But when she said that, in that very moment, I truly understood what she meant. Is because I allowed this young girl to be vulnerable. Because I think one of the reasons why I'm not trying to be preachy or chant, I definitely want to empower. But I think the one part that I have seen is that our women need to be told by our own women that they are in fact beautiful. I think for those that grew up in the culture too often, they walk around with a lot of cultural trauma that unfortunately, because when they come up against the social dynamics, it becomes even more reinforced of this lack of self-worth. And so one of the things I'm seeking to do through Harmonious Leadership is to really support Black women in shifting this narrative to being able to see yourself as beautiful. I didn't always look this way. I wasn't always empowered this way. And if people knew the trueness of my story, I cannot deny that God had his hand on me, guiding and directing me a lot of the way, because I didn't have the parental support. And my parents were amazing. They did the best with what they could, but I didn't come from a supportive two-parent household, not because my parents didn't want to, but because of the trauma that they had suffered. And so one of the things that I will share with you is that in order for us to change this conversation, we have to start looking at the pain of our people and stop judging the pain of our people. And we have to also accept there are going to be some people that will be stuck in their pain. But there are some people, if we extend that olive branch, someone is going to grab back and then want to transform their pain. And so what I spend a lot of my time doing, as some of you may have known or seen in the media, I've talked about exiting my company. I've built it to a certain point and it's time for new leadership. And so I've transitioned into spending time supporting and rebuilding women and giving Black women the same emotional safe spaces that African American women gave to me in the storyline of around finding healing, sisterhood, camaraderie, and also doing ancestral healing too. We don't realize, and this time I'll speak from a scientific place, is that how much trauma is held in our DNA as displaced Africans. And we have been holding trauma that is in our bodies. And so I teach a modality on how we can transform that trauma. And this can be utilized by any person of any belief system as well. But I use scientific and psychological tools to aid in transforming behavior, rewiring the mind, changing the conversation. It's so vitally important for our women. And I think there are women, I would say in Caribbean culture particularly, many of us are crying out for that opportunity because no one has ever spoken to our little girl, given that our little girl that safe space. And so when we get into a place of leadership, how can we be vulnerable when we've never seen it? We've never had it. We've never seen it. I only became the woman that I became because there were the environment that I grew up in. I had access to mental health resources. White women gave me the space to unpack my trauma. And then as I've grown, I've just kept the conversation going and aligning along Black women who could help me unpack the trauma and my healing further. So I hope that gives you a very all-encompassing answer to that question, Jacqueline. In order to transform the conversation, it's not so much about, I will share this, none of our people want to be disrespectful. They don't want to have crabs in the barrel mentality, but they're broken, and they're not broken because they want to be. It's a combination of cultural as well as ancestral trauma that we're coming up against.
Thank you, Doctor. Doctor, quickly, again, so much to unpack from that response that you gave to my question. But the one quick question comes to mind is this an easy fix? We're talking about generational trauma. Mm-hmm. We're talking about cultural trauma. Mm-hmm. Is this an easy fix? And are we putting too much expectation on our people, our culture, our gender in such a short space of time? It appears to me we're going to need numerous leaders, and we're going to need them consistently over a long space of time to affect positive and long-lasting change. Can you speak to that, please?
Right. So one of the things, you've heard me talk about God a few times in this conversation. A lot of times when we look at the dynamics that in fact impact our community, it becomes downright overwhelming, and it becomes totally tumultuous. And I will share this. I'm a living witness of that transformative change. I also have seen God's wonder-working power of transforming very dire straits circumstances and almost accelerating those circumstances. And some people, I'll give you an example. If you're like me, you either grew up in church, walked away from church, came back to church, whatever it is, right? Whatever your belief is. And then we say, one of my primary reasons why I walked away from the church was, oh, Jesus can't be real. He can't heal me because I know him, but I'm walking around broken. I'm tithing, but I'm walking around broke. I'm walking around that. What has changed in this season, in the last 4 years of my life, has been remarkable. And so I will talk about this. When there's a willingness for change, people can create a ripple effect of change. And don't deny the power of a ripple effect, because what I have taught What one African American woman taught me, I have now been able to sow that into hundreds, if not thousands of other women globally. And so the one part that I will share with you, if you were to duplicate, if I started to teach even you that, Jacqueline, the amount of other women that you could sow into consistently on a weekly basis and teach them, and then they go and teach them. I think it's really important that we understand that, because a lot of times we're always, I think traditionally in our community, we've been looking for leaders or saviors to come, but not understanding it's a combination. We can't always focus on the social narrative. And I'll share this about our Black men. I love our Black men, but our Black men are so broken and so hurt by what has happened to them that they have in fact shifted and walked away from being spiritually aligned. So they've developed these spaces of where they're just kind of festering in their frustration and their anger. And that unfairness is not productive for any. And that's not even just true for Black men. That's true for, I've seen this transition over the 20 years where Black men and women, because they're so hurt by this ongoing dynamic socially, that they're blaming God. The pain and the shame has clouded their judgment, so they're blaming God. God isn't the one to blame. I had one man share with me, do not judge the crooked and broken path. Do not judge the straight and narrow path by the broken and drunk that is staggering all over that narrow straight path. And that stuck with me, because too often we don't allow God into the conversation. We actually remove God from the conversation and then try to do things ourselves. And that has been one of our, I would share, our limitations in the current conversation. We have become more concerned about seeking financial resource, important component, but not the only component. And as you heard me say at the very beginning, one of the greatest realities that I discovered is when people, we hear in some of the online social media metrics, I hear Black men and women saying, well, if I just had money, that this whole conversation would change. No, it wouldn't. Because if your mind and your spirit are sick, it's not going to change. You're just going to have money, and that money is going to fly right out of your hands, right? So how do you retain wealth? How do you make effective change? That means you have to heal your spirit, then you have to heal your mind, and that filters into your emotion. And then you have clarity that you can go out into the world and be the very change that you want to be. I'm focused on us changing, because herein lies the part that I think that we've been missing. We've been so focused on trying to change a system that we did not create. We didn't create the system. But how can we find peace within the system in certain circumstances is a part of that. I'm a living witness to that. When you can actually and I want people to hear me when I say this, don't look at my personal success, even though you've read my bio and all that stuff. That is not where I've been successful. Where I've been successful is I've healed the ancestral trauma in my family. I've broken the generational curses in my family. I have, in fact, removed all of that genetically from my DNA energetically. And so now my kids get to move forward in truth and brilliance. And that's what I want for my Black men and women, is to have peace regardless of what the world around you is in fact saying. Because the world around you, it's an entity unto itself. And that is if you start focusing on that, you're going to become overwhelmed. But if you become the change that you want to see for your family and your children, it will in fact create a ripple effect that will be transformative. And that cannot be taken away.
Thank you so much for that. And let me first say that I invite you to sow into me so that I can go out and sow in to thousands and thousands and so on and so on. I can imagine that there must be quite the lineup, or there should be, of women looking for you to sow into their lives, because I truly believe that that's the way that we're going to see sustainable and long-lasting, effective change within our community. Let's move on to a really big question before we close up today, unless our audience keeps us here longer with more questions, and that is the harmonious leader. I am in love with this subject topic now. I know that quite often I'm using leadership, women leaders, women in leadership. That's the phrase that I've been using for some number of years. But this new phrase now, harmonious leadership, that is a completely different subject now that I'm definitely going to be opening up in my life and sharing. But tell us in your words, how do you believe harmonious leaders like yourself will be able to transform the future?
Well, one part, we're putting people first, right? So when you put God first, you put people first, right? And and I think organizations need to understand this, that once you put people first, people show up giving more and more and more and more. It has to be people first. It has to, I can't even begin to, I think that's just simply, that summarizes it. It has to be a people first focus. It has to be a wellness focus. How do we serve our people so that way we can get the greatest form of performance out of them, right? And so we pour into people, we put people first within an organization. We also provide people with the tools that are necessary to transform their lives. And that's in fact what Harmonious Leadership, the framework, does. I didn't go into grave detail about that framework because it's actually taking apart all of those 7 pillars and breaking them and micro breaking them down into sections where you have to create goals and targets that you implement into your life or get an organization within your life.
Thank you so much. And as we close out today, I just want to, I know that I can keep this conversation going forever and a day, but I have to be cognizant it's not just you and I that are here, because it would all be about what I personally need. And I know that our audience members today have definitely taken away a wealth of knowledge from this topic of conversation today. And we'd like to keep things going. I'd like to be able to share you with the audience that will be watching this video in the future. And how can we share you with those individuals?
How can you share me? Well, you can find me at janaeazenstrass.com. So that's one place where you can find me. LinkedIn as a second place. And then the third place happens to be through the Holy Living Institute. So the Holy Living Research Institute, you can find us there as well.
Thank you so much. Okay, so once again, ladies and gentlemen, you have been privy to one of the most sensational conversations that I have ever personally been involved with. Dr. Janae is a keeper. She's a pillar for our community, and I can't wait to continue to support her endeavors as she will be pouring into my life as she has poured into yours. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm going to turn it over now to Donna to wrap up today's session. And we look forward to communicating with you again, Dr. Janae, I'm sure in the very near future.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Donna, please take it away.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. We appreciate it. This was an amazing conversation. And I can't wait to have you guys back again for another conversation. So, folks, see you next week. We have another outstanding conversation about tips on how to build your child confidence. And following week, we have, was I just scammed? Lots of great conversations coming up. So please continue to join us every single Sunday. Thank you so much, Dr. Janae, and thank you so much, Jacqueline, all the J's. It was a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 woman growing strong. have reached your destiny.